finishing each other's sentences, or we're not communicating our background knowledge to you all, just interrupt. Just let us know. We won't be offended. So my name is Nanna. I'm a coordinator of Residence Life at UNCG, and I currently oversee half of Spartan Village.
My name is Dobbs. I am an area coordinator at the University of West Georgia, formerly a CRO here at UNCG. Transition out of position. So I'm back to talk about our lovely experience with really fun crisis situation. So it's fun.
Well,
unique.
So what we're going to be talking about today is primarily a case study of our experience when one of our buildings in construction broke down. So for an agenda of what we're going to go over, we will give you a little bit of an overview of Spartan Village. It is a large part of UNCG's future, current and future, and so we want to kind of put some of that in context for y'all. We're then going to go into a case study of the Highland Residence Hall fire, in terms of the fire itself, the crisis management, and then the follow-up, as well as putting that building back online a semester late. Then we'll go into just kind of an overall discussion of crisis response and how that might apply to your respective institutions, and then we'll hopefully wrap up on time and get us back on track. So, alright, so an overview of Spartan Village. Have any of y'all been able to drive past Spartan Village? It's right down the road on Main Street. A few of you? Okay. So in 2007, UNCG updated its campus master plan. And we were looking at enrollment projected to increase. 2009, they projected enrollment to increase significantly. We haven't actually increased our enrollment to those exact numbers. But looking at that, UNCG said, well, we do not have the housing on campus to enroll this many students and to keep them living on campus. And so a new housing plan was adopted. This included a number of renovations and changes, but what we're looking at specifically is the addition of Spartan Village. Planning for it began in 2010, so this is long before Ashley or I had completed grad school or at the university, and construction began in 2012. So Spartan Village was in the making for a long time. It is intended to be, here's a bit of a timeline where you can see from 2008, we go all the way through to the current day and time. It was intended to always be a mixed-use community. And so what that means is our buildings are not just apartment communities. There is residential space in them, there's classroom space, there's retail space. There's other offices who work in our building and they have their own access points. And it really is meant to be literally a village with a variety of different entities offered to students. And so early on in the planning, as the university was thinking of what is Spartan Village going to include, they really wanted to work cohesively with the Glenwood community. So this was the expansion of the university's boundaries. We had to go in that direction because the other boundaries were Aycock, Tate, and Market Street, and there really wasn't any room to expand in those directions. And so the decision was made to go across Lake Street. The town and gown relationship started early. So as the architects were working on that, and they were actually here yesterday if you had an opportunity to meet them in the associates area, discussions were held, forums were held in the Glenwood community of what do you want this to be? And so some of that came out in the architecture of the building, of how have we actually been able to take some of Glenwood's considerations and the residents' considerations and merge it with the university's goal. Spartan Village is representative of a culture change on UNCG's campus. So we are expanding the campus borders. We'll talk about it a little more later, but one of the things we were faced with was students saying, oh, I live off campus in Spartan Village. No, you live on campus. It's just a new part of on campus. And we were the first phase of Spartan Village. So there are multiple phases of the Spartan Village expansion. Currently they're working on building a new recreation center. After this is Spartan Village Residential Area Phase 2. But we were the first ones. And so that meant that us and our staff and our residents were really facing a lot of new terminology, a lot of new ideas. And that required some change in terms of how we built that community around this previously unexplored area. And we also wanted to stay true to some of UNCG's values and culture. And so some really extreme efforts were made to make Spartan Village not as disruptive. For example, a lot of the buildings that were torn down, that parts were donated if they were able to be used in new houses. There were bees, honeybees, those were relocated and assimilated into a new environment. So trying to preserve as much as they could. Not everything could be preserved, but to an extent, efforts were made.
In addition, some of the trees and stuff, and people aren't really living in a particular space, and it's kind of a desolate area, but they did build 3 houses behind Spartan Village. So time on, there was a lot of ambiguity and kind of backlash to a certain degree about the expansion of campus. And so we had to kind of disperse the rumors like, no, we built houses, we didn't tear people's homes down, we actually put people into new spaces. So it was a cool experience.
So this is actually a map of what the Garden Village will look like. So the buildings that we are looking at are 1, 2, 3, and 4. That is our residential community. And you will see little changes were made. So this was not originally going to be here, but after Glenwood gave feedback that they wanted a more integrated feel, a Spartan Village and the Glenwood community, you'll see some nicer boundaries instead of a straight line across. Some of the green space was added in, and you can see the future of how our campus will look in the coming years as construction is planned. So that's a bit of an overview of Spartan Village. It's a lot of information to try and fit it together, but hopefully it'll make what we talk about make a little more sense. We're going to be talking specifically about Building 2, which is Highland Hall. Highland Hall burned down while in construction on March 14th, 2013. We were scheduled to open Highland Hall in August 2013. It was 70% completed. So we'll give a bit of an overview of crisis, not a ton, assuming that since we all work in housing, we have a bit of experience with that. We'll talk a little bit about the fire. Ashley and I were actually in different locations at the time of the fire, so we'll provide two perspectives, and then we'll talk about how we recovered from that experience. So moving into crisis, a lot of it comes into how does it make people feel? What is the impact it has? Is it expected or unexpected? There's a lot of factors that can make crisis what it is to that person. But we're really looking at an event which is often sudden or unexpected that disrupts the normal operations of the institution or its educational mission and threatens the well-being of personnel, property, financial resources, and or reputation. And I think that the Highland Fire really covered all those qualities in terms of the current students we had living near the building, in terms of what it meant for our future growth, what it meant for the residents who were living there, our student staff, in a variety of different ways. And it was pretty significant, as you'll see through some photos coming up. We are going to be looking and referencing the crisis management cycle from Rollo and Tedeschi. And so it is the response, how do you recover from it? What are we learning from it? How do you plan for it in the future? And then how do you prevent it? So hopefully we'll go through some of those rather quickly. And so this is just a photo. We don't have internet, so we can't play video. But this is a perspective of Highland as it was burning down. If you've ever, I don't know if any of y'all saw it, but if you look up YouTube videos of the UNCG fire, it's pretty substantial in terms of what you can see. So moving on. Ashley will talk about this.
Okay, so when Emily and I were assigned to Spartan Village, we were assigned our respective buildings. And so Highland Hall was actually my building. And so TPE was going on, NASA was going on. And so my counterpart, my twin, was in Orlando, Florida, with everyone else that had something to do with Spartan Village. So that is our director, our vice chancellor for student affairs, our associate director, and our direct supervisor. We're all in Orlando, and I was frolicking in Greensboro. And so I got a phone call from my direct supervisor, and she said, "Have you heard?" I said, "I heard what?" Spartan Village is on fire. Wait a minute, Spartan Village is 4 buildings. All of it cannot be on fire. What are you talking about? She said, "Well, Spartan Village is on fire. Stand by." And she hung up. And I said, "Okay." So, do not panic was my initial reaction, and that's easier said than done. But it was like, okay, I'm cooking dinner. Let me throw on some sweatpants because I don't know what is about to happen. So there was a rumor of fire in Spartan Village. So the CRO that was on duty was in Harris Teeter and got a phone call from one of her RAs and said, "Hey, Spartan Village is on fire. Check Twitter." Okay, what are you talking about? "Yeah, Spartan Village is on fire. We're looking at the top of the building. We can see fire coming from what's supposed to be Spartan Village." And so immediately she picked up the phone and called the AD on duty, who then called everyone else and said, "You all need to stand by. We're about to immediately move into crisis mode." Now, we have training around crisis, and we might do simulations and training, but I don't think anything really fully prepares you for, hey, you actually have to spring into action, so what does this even mean? So immediate action response and process. So the CRO that was on call, called up necessarily, and then called out. And so everyone that was on staff was immediately on duty. And so if you were at the mall, you just come back to campus, and we had to kind of assess what we were going to do from there. So the crisis response. What I was charged with is I had to go to the EDC and meet the students that were in loss only. So Lost on Lee is our graduate student housing option, and it is immediately, literally, like you can reach out across a street and you're at Highland Hall. And so there were residents living there at the time of the fire. And so the immediate concern was, are there students in the building? What do we need to do? Let's get the students out. And so the fire department, the police department knocked on the door, students need to go to the EUC. So students were arriving at the EUC, flustered, it's 11 o'clock at night, so they're like, I don't want to do this, what's the problem? I can stay in my room, it's not gonna catch me. And so we had to get names, call students, pulling rosters, calling students, are you in the building? If you're not, okay, because it was also spring break, which I think contributed to really there was a sense of calm and a sense of urgency in this because the students were, if the building was completely full, I think we would have had probably a different tactic, it would have been a little bit more stringent. So students came and we got phone numbers and then it was immediately, okay, well they now have no place to stay because we can't have them living or residing in a space with a building that is literally burning and it burned for the next 3-4 days, like smoldering, which is hot. So making contact with lost residents and then campus management interactions. So immediately the associate vice chancellor came to campus, the students came to campus, and it was like, well, what do we do next? Okay, so we have the students here, we need to start to try and find places to house them. And luckily, UNCG is prepared enough that we had spaces that we could just put students in, even if it was temporarily, and that is kind of the process that we moved into. So, response from us here in Greensboro, continuing. So, communication about the PR response. So, hey, are we picking up the phone and calling friends? Are we calling family? Are we calling our students? Are we calling our RA staff? What are we doing? It was communicated that we just need to just handle it. Handle it, do not talk to the media because naturally if there's a huge fire on a major thoroughfare in a major city, people are going to show up, cameras are going to show up, and so it was instructed that we did not need to communicate to the media on behalf of the department, on behalf of the university. We will let Chancellor Brady do that, we'll let Tim, our director, do that. And so we said, okay, we're just going to focus on our students. And so maintenance facilities contact. Again, the associate director of facilities, maintenance supervisors, everybody was showing up to campus. And they just stood there because you see your hard work really literally burning to the ground. So they came into the main housing office and we talked about what was going on and it was like, hey guys, it's gone. It burned from left to right, top to bottom in 4 minutes. And so the relocation of students, we literally took graduate students and some upperclassmen students and had to place them into first year halls. They weren't too happy about that, but it was, reassurance of your safety and security. Hey, just know that this is temporary. Tentatively, this is temporary. And then parents actually started calling. People started calling. It's 11 o'clock at night. Hey, what's going on? Is my building on fire? Is it safe to come back to campus? Because this is like a Friday, I think. I was going to return to campus tomorrow or on Sunday. Am I going to have a place to stay? And so, yes, we're going to work tirelessly to make sure that everything is implemented so you can come back to your space. Everything is fine. As of right now, Lost on Lee is safe. And all the other buildings, we will just have to kind of move forward as we know. Something else additionally with the PR response, immediately, sorry. The next step. So the next day, we had to get up, 7 o'clock, be at the main office, and communication and tasks. So one of our assistant directors was here, Chris Gregory, and he said, okay guys, we had the Red Cross come out, we had to put diamond gloves on our students' cards, and basically gave them linen. He said, okay, we just need to house you for a second. Just give us these 24 hours, these 12 hours, and let us figure out our next step of action. And so we made the decision, a decision was made to allow the students to enter into their space because we did not know how long the building was going to smolder. And the fire department said that no one could go into their space. They could not live there until the fire was completely over. And so this was over the weekend. So we had students, the CROs escorted the students back into Lost on Lee and keep them. We said you have 10 minutes to grab everything that you would need. Well, how long is this going to be? I do not know. And I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but I need for you to get the essentials, and whether that is your computer and that is your books, and I'm yelling out things, toilet tissue, you need a toothbrush, you need some clothes, so just like, you're really serious? Yes, I'm really serious. I'm sorry for the inconvenience, but let's keep it moving. So we entered the students' rooms, and people stood there and just kind of looked because it was literally just still on fire. And they had fire trucks still pouring water into the building. So we escorted the residents into the space, and the media was there, and so sometimes the media would like to stop the students and stop us, and we had to just keep walking. I'm sorry, I can't talk. everything, you know, so again, the reinsurance and safety and security, as of right now, the fire department, the fire marshal said that you're okay, this building is okay, we will move forward accordingly.
So, well, Ashley was in Greensboro with many of our colleagues taking care of that. If I can just add on a little bit, I wasn't there. But part of the issue, I believe, in terms of evacuating the loss-only residents is, one, we didn't know how structurally sound Highland was. So we didn't know if a wall from Highland were to fall, it would hit loss-only. They're that close in terms of each other, and to the smoke damage and is it safe to inhabit that environment. But I was in Orlando, Florida that year, recruiting at the placement exchange. And as Ashley said, we had the assistant director, our associate director, our director, and our vice chancellor. So the immediate chain of command over Spartan Village were there with us. So we were at dinner. We've been recruiting all day. We decided, okay, we're going to go grab dinner. And so we're having a great conversation. We're getting to know each other. We're talking. And then our director gets a phone call and says, Spartan Village is on fire. And we jumped up. We paid that bill so quickly. I've never seen us pay a bill that quickly. We ran in the car. We had one other coordinator with us, and he was given directions to drive as everyone else was on their phone, pulling up Twitter, getting in contact with staff, trying to figure out as much as possible. At the time in Orlando, we didn't know which building was on fire. We hadn't been told that. And we weren't sure if it was going to spread to the other buildings. And so, for context, the buildings were about 70% done, but they didn't have the fire life safety equipment that a finished building would have yet. And so, there were no sprinklers, there were no alarms, there was nothing to prevent it from moving forward. And so, it was fascinating as a new professional, someone who was only in their second year or second semester of work, full time, to hear directors and vice chancellors saying, I wonder if it's going to take down all the other buildings. And I got a call, I was asked by one of them, what building is your apartment in again? And that's when the first time I realized, oh, okay, what does this mean for us? Because we had already been assigned to that placement for the following year. And so we ran back to our hotel. We had another coordinator who literally rolled up and we ran out of the car and we went up to the vice chancellor's suite. And they basically set up their mini little station. And so all of them were on the phone, and it was fascinating to see how that theory we learned, those books we read about crisis management and all the pieces, coming into play right in front of me. And so I was pretty much given whatever miscellaneous tasks anyone came up with. So Emily, write this down. I'm like, I don't have a pen, I don't have paper, we're at dinner. So I'm on my phone and I'm like, okay, write this down. They started immediately drafting emails, drafting what we were going to say. Our assistant director was thinking of this resident. Wait, we need to get a hold of this resident. And this person, we need to find a hold of this person. And these specific people. Our vice chancellor was taking a much broader overview. And so she's in touch with her team, so other associate vice presidents, and figuring out, okay, what does this mean for the Red Cross? How are we connecting with the community? It was asked at one point, maybe an hour or two in, do we need to return to Greensboro? Do we need to get a rental car right now and drive to be there? And the decision was made no. But that is what we were looking at, was not so much the, okay, we're handing out blankets, but it was the PR, it was those decisions. And the decisions were made very quickly, as we'll see coming up. So, Red Cross coordination. So, our Vice Chancellor is Sherry Callahan, and as it was mentioned the other night, she is heavily involved in the Red Cross. And so that was the first thing she thought of is, let's bring the Red Cross in. Let's get these residents toilet paper and toothbrushes and all of those things. And how are we coordinating with that? The assistant director over Loss on Leaf, which was an occupied building at the time, was with us, and so she knew residents in that building. And so her thought was, wait, I know this specific resident can't be around fire, and we have smoke issues with this person. And how are we thinking of these different things? So she's calling staff in Greensboro saying, hey, I need you to go find this one person. You need to lay your eyes on them. We need to find out where they are. So that was helpful to have that perspective there in a stressful but quieter environment to be thinking of those different things. Drafting communications and decisions. So literally the decisions and emails that went out came out immediately. And we'll get into that in a minute. And then debriefing staff over the phone. So I think we probably got that call, we had a late dinner, so maybe 8, 9 p.m. I remember walking down the hallways of the hotel, the placement hotel, with our AD on the phone with Ashley here until probably 3 a.m. And so, how are you? What are we talking about with this? Emily, how are you doing? Are you okay? Where do all these pieces come in together? Because it is a crisis. And so as much as we are concerned about our students and how are they doing, and as well as the public perception, we also need to remember that our staff are people. And so how are they addressing this major crisis going on at this time? While at the same time, this had an impact on our recruitment. So we had just sat through an entire day of placement interviews. Spartan Village was all over our website. It was a huge piece of our marketing. And candidates were asking about it. They wanted to know about it. Oh, I'm so interested in this and that, whatever. And I remember before going to bed, I looked at our assistant director and I said, what are we telling candidates when they ask us about Spartan Village tomorrow? She's like, we'll get to that, we'll get to that. And they did, they asked us. We walked into the placement exchange the next day, and I had a friend from grad school come up, and he's like, I heard you all just had a building burned down last night. Of course, I mean, we're all there in higher ed. Most people at placement exchange work in res life, and so it's spread like that. So people were coming up trying to talk to us about that. While we're running on 3 hours of sleep, and we're trying to sell Ashley Dobbs and wanting to come, don't you want to come work for us at the same time? So that was interesting to have to address. It did pull some of our staff out of placement, so normally our director would be very heavily involved in sitting in the interviews, and he and our vice chancellor needed to go. They were in their suite trying to figure out where are we moving forward. So moving forward on multiple ends, but still remember, we're here to do a job. We weren't set to drive right back, so we need to bring the best and the brightest back to Greensboro with us. It also impacted our student staff. I was not over Highland Hall. None of my RIs were assigned to Highland Hall. I got emails when I woke up to go to placement the next morning saying, do I still have a job still? And of course, we don't want to say anything to them too much. We're not trying to give them too much information. And so I'm like, all right, I have to weigh message up. I can delay an answer for a few hours and then come up with a generic response. Yes, you still have a job. Further decisions will be made later. Which our millennial students did not like. They wanted to know what are we doing right then and there. But these were people, these were student staff that we had just, added to our team 3-4 weeks ago through the RI selection. And so they were not sure what was going on. To give you an idea of how quickly our media moved, I went through my emails and I listed all the emails and decisions that we made and their times. So the fire was Thursday evening around 9 p.m. Friday morning around 12:30. An email came from the staff in Orlando saying, these are your PR responsibilities. Don't talk. Please don't talk to the media. We will have unified answers. A few minutes later, we sent an email to current residents about the temporary building closure because they were all concerned about what was going on. And these were decisions being made in Orlando as the staff were trying to work through these frantic things in Greensboro. At 1:44 a.m., professional staff were emailed regarding the work that was completed. Thank you all for that. The next morning, shortly after business hours began, all of our posters, they had just made these beautiful, huge posters, probably the size of Ashley, that were scheduled to go in every single building. They had just been placed in the mailboxes on Thursday. They were all pulled. All media, everything we had on Spartan Village that was in the halls, we were told to go through all your buildings and make sure it all comes down. Because we don't know what we're dealing with at this point. The chancellor emailed the community, the campus community, Friday afternoon. An email came from Tim Johnson, our director of residential life, our housing residence life, that later on. And all of this ran concurrent to all the things we have going on. And so what I really took from this experience was that the crisis management, you can't do it as one person. You need multiple people there making these things happen. Because not only were we reassuring students, but we still had students on call. We still had students getting locked out of their buildings and forgetting a towel in the bathroom and those things. But we need to be making these decisions. We need to look at our staff. And a lot of these processes all ran at once. It truly took our entire office to make this happen.
So, some ongoing recovery. So, ambiguity of immediate actions, and we just transitioned into, all of these things were still happening simultaneously. So, we still had a job to do and basically a business to run, the residents to take care of. So, project completion. There was the question of, okay, so what are we going to do about Spartan Village? So, we have 3 buildings. We said we were going to open 4. We have one that is now completely gone. And are we going to be able to build it? Are we going to be able to build it by December? Is it going to be open at all? Is it just going to become a grass space? These were questions that kind of really had to really talk about. CRO job security. So as Emily kind of alluded to, this is going to be our home. We work on campus, we live on campus. And so the question of where both of our apartments are going to be, luckily and thankfully, they were in 2 other buildings. But the question really was, hey, am I going to have a job? Because I was closing another building. So Reynolds, I was CRO over Reynolds Hall, and I had to close Reynolds and open Spartan Village in like a 3-month time span. So this is going to be closed down, and the project's happening, the architects are ready, and then The staffing package is dynamic. So, selected to have a staff of 9 RAs, and 6 of them lived in Highland Hall. Were assigned to Highland Hall. So I had 6 beds completely gone. So 6 staff members potentially without a job. And as UNCG is an access institution, that means a number of factors for our students. And so these were the conversations that I was having with our assistant director at 3 o'clock in the morning. You know, what do I say to my staff members? Because I'm getting text messages, I'm getting phone calls. We just had a kumbaya the week before where everybody met each other. We were all excited, and now, you know, they're like, well, do I have a home? So split up the original staff. So the decision came down that, you know, until something else were to happen, I would have all 9 staff members. So I need to communicate, hey, yes, you have a job, but I don't know what that means. Something will happen. And then the decision was made that as vacancies became open over the course of the year, whether because of grade or someone didn't want an RA position anymore, that they would pull from my staff and put them onto other staffs. So that was, you know, when you pick your staff and you have some sort of attachment, that was a process to kind of also process through, because again, they met each other, they were excited to be in this new facility, and so some of the RA staff members were pulled into other staffs, into other buildings. Occupancy concerns. So, you know, we were pretty much almost full, but not fully full, and so, okay, well, we don't have a building now, so where are we going to put the students that were assigned into this particular building? Are we going to relocate them into another building across campus? Well, that's not what they want. They want to live in Spartan Village. So how do we navigate that and still make sure that the students are accommodated? And so we stopped all room sign up, because the administrative side of the house needs to make sure that these particular students were placed into new spaces. And many of them were placed into the other buildings that had not been filled, and then other students were in other places on campus. So follow up with student staff on this and changes. I just was very transparent. That's my style. But I really communicated with those 9 and with my new grad, who I believe was at that time had been onboarded, and it's like, this is what's going on. As things come about, I will do my best to keep you in the loop. I think that there's nothing less, particularly when it comes to your home. I don't know what's going on. Let me communicate with you about what's going on. So I just followed up with them consistently. When they were placed on different staffs and they emailed me and said what happened, you know, it was just an honest conversation about, you know, I don't have the beds. So luckily I was able to keep 5, but 4 had to go to different spaces, and, you know, transitions. So the preparation for opening the remaining building. So that was an interesting transition, because we literally were prepping for opening in an active construction zone. And so we did not move into our buildings really until like 2 days before training started. And so we're prepping for opening and training and making sure that they don't run into the tractors and all the debris and all of these other things. So a quite interesting experience, and then also, you know, reassuring our staff that it is going to be okay, you are safe, it is fine, and as we're just going to roll with the punches. It was a roll with the punches year. And in communication to our incoming residents. So again, we were transparent with them. Tim Johnson is our director, and he communicated to all the students about, hey, this is going on with fire in Spartan Village. Yes, Highland Hall will be rebuilt, because the decision had been made that it would be rebuilt, and they were going to work with the end of the year timeline, so December 2013 timeline. And as we know, sometimes timelines are great, and when you're building construction, you have no idea if the weather wants to cooperate. So he'll communicate with your incoming residents about, hey, yes, you're going to come onto campus. Yes, you will be able to move into your space. Everything will be great. Our staff is waiting for you. But please be cautious and be cognizant that you are entering an active construction zone. You cannot go into the building. You cannot step foot onto this side of the street. So kind of navigating new space on top of being in the Glenwood community. So we were open and honest and transparent, and
So part of what made it challenging is that at this point, once the building burned down and the decision was made to rebuild Highland, is we no longer had one construction timeline. We had 2 construction timelines, and one was 6 months ahead of the other. So as we were hearing about, oh, okay, we're getting furniture in Lee and Union, and we're getting shutters put in, and we're getting paint, and we're about to get our certificate of occupancy, and the washers and dryers are arriving, we're hearing, hey, we're hoping that we have all the sidewall up on Highland. So it's 2 completely separate construction timelines that we're now trying to manage the 2 together. To give you an idea of how rapidly this came together, on Friday, August 2nd, we were able to move into our apartments. Wednesday, August 14th, so a week and a half later. I don't, it's kind of small on the screen, but if you were to look carefully at this picture, you would see that our buildings, when we arrived and walked in when our students arrived, we're not completely prim and proper. Wires were still hanging down. It was legal for us to live there. We were cleared by the state. But you can see ceiling tiles aren't there. Perhaps some doors weren't there. Some of the cosmetic aspects. Furniture was not in the student spaces. We did have it for the RAs and for us. A lot of debris from the construction was still around. So we are bringing our students who have already been kind of shaken by this fire and not knowing what's going on into a more ambiguous environment. So, as Ashley alluded to earlier, Highlands construction did impact our residential experience for the fall semester. So we had to think of noise. So they were working on the building from 7 a.m. until 4:30 p.m. Our students don't like waking up at 7 a.m. And so that was not helping. So getting students to understand, yeah, there's going to be noise from the construction, and no, we can't delay it until 12 noon. I understand you don't have morning classes, but we can't delay it. There was also a contractor staff presence, and so the building was being rebuilt by contractors. It wasn't by our housing staff, and so getting our students to be aware, what does that mean? Yes, that means there will be more people around. Yes, that means when we talk about not letting tailgaters in and being cognizant of your safety and security, we mean it. While they have been vetted by us to be on site and to be working on this, they're not an RA. So when you tell me, oh, it was the contractor with a hammer, that doesn't narrow it down for me. I don't know who that is. A lot of our amenities were delayed, and that later came into play in terms of our student satisfaction with their experience. So Highland Hall was scheduled to have a Subway cafe, was scheduled to have office space, and it was scheduled to have a fitness center. None of that was available in the fall. The Subway cafe, in fact, did not open until May. And so students were living in these other buildings with the promise of these amenities, and we weren't able to deliver on that. And they still came to us for probably the first 3 months asking, where's the fitness center? Honey, it's not built yet. We're going to get it for you. We'll get you a fitness center. We just got to wait on it a little bit. We also had construction updates to think of. And so we were able to complete the exterior of the building before moving, which was great. That really set a limit on how much noise would be outside of the building. But we had porta potties in our streets. We lost parking. An entire road was dedicated just to their trucks. That impacted our bus schedules because you have trucks unloading and loading in and out. It impacted what the student experience was. And so this, again, to just give you an idea, is what the building looked like when we opened. They were not complete. All right, so we wanted our communication with our residents once they moved in to be proactive and to give them as much information as possible. But that's really hard when we don't know what's going on ourselves. And so we needed to educate them on safety regarding construction. Those green fences, we mean it when we say don't go over them. What does it mean when you hear these things? When you see these machines, no, don't go near them. We also had general operational differences in general, and so we switched to an access system. We have a different laundry system. We created bus routes, all because Spartan Build was part of this big culture change for UNCG. And so giving them that information is one thing, but many of the decisions that were made were in place for the fall. Because then once we were able to open that fourth building, open up the roads again, all those pieces would come into play. That changes how we're operating. And in general, Highland just kind of compounded other issues from new facilities. So some issues that we would have in a new facility regardless in terms of AC and noise and seeing how does the HVAC system work and what do our water pipes really mean. Highland just kind of was that final thing that just kind of set everyone off a little bit. So as students, as supervisors of the building and student staff, it did impact their experience. So our student staff were so eager to move in, so eager. They were lining up to move in. I hospitalized a student the day after I moved in because his eye had a small scratch and the dust from the construction infected it, and he didn't want to go to the doctor, and I told him it wasn't an option. You need to go to the hospital now. So we were challenged to, one, care for them while also opening this environment. It was challenging for them to provide quality residential experiences when the students were already frustrated by many things. And so our student staff might be frustrated by that too. They're living in that same environment. But you need to make it a positive experience for them. And many of the details still were being worked out. We needed to adapt our routine tasks. So Rounds now had a construction zone in the middle of it, separating two buildings. How do y'all passionate about fire evacuations as that group, because they knew what could happen, and it very much impacted their experience. And so counseling through that of, yes, I'm appreciative of that, but we also need to portray some professionalism, and let's talk about those emotions of how it's going on. And in general, we just have smaller staff and resident numbers than we had anticipated. So some of our plans for hall council, we don't have a building there. So what do we do with those positions that were supposed to be in this building? What does this mean for how our resident numbers are divided up by RA? And so that impacted some of those changes. We did make a few changes. So we tried to remain consistent as supervisors of the staff and community. So before either one of us would make a decision about the community or what we're expecting from our staff, we talked to each other. I've never seen an RA staff as close as our two staffs were combined last year. We provided a lot of large-scale programming in the spaces we did have. So our goal was to make it as positive an experience for them as possible. So you're right, we don't have that fitness center. What can we do for you instead?
Given the opportunities to literally step in, we need to be able to just hit the ground running. I don't want us to have to waste any time because that's going to add more stress to you. Because all the RCRs still have to be checked, all the doors have to be checked, all the rooms have to be checked. We have furniture in this place, does the water work? We have to do all of these things in probably 2 days, a day. Because even in training, we still could not get into the building. So openness and ambiguity. I think that was just a real skill that Emily, her staff, and my staff really just learned how to just really work in ambiguity. So we have plans, and what do plans mean? Plans, we set them because we want to be proactive, but that does not always mean that will happen, particularly with construction and with opening a building. So, hey guys, let's just make sure we have all of these things prepped and ready. So if the plans don't work out, at the very least, when it does happen, we can just go right in. Program preparation. So we planned programs. So I knew that my fitness center was going to open in the building, so I connected with Campus Rec and I planned programs. I planned a fitness series for the spring semester. Just really trying to be proactive. So in the winter, I contacted our marketing assistant director and said, hey, this is my idea. Can we get some stuff printed? And so when school opened, the fitness center did not open until late January, but immediately when it opened, all this correspondence came out. Hey guys, these are the programs planned for you. Let's come on in, and then training modification, and that piece is really just, so you have a timeline of training, but you also have to do a lot of major administrative operation stuff. So you have to be opening a building and then do occupancy checks, and then making sure that your RCRs are done. And so these are really big tasks in a really big building, because Hollywood is the second largest building in Spartan Village, with 5 staff members. So I leaned on my dear sister here, and she's like, what do I need to do? What can I help you with? So that's just training modification. So some of the stuff that I wanted to originally go over with my staff, it's like, what, we really just have to focus on opening, and we'll just finish the staff development time and talk about some of the things that I wanted to do originally. So again, opening prep, the building was not fully ready for opening. Again, so it wasn't fully up. They were not fully ready in August, and Hollywood was not fully ready in January. And that it was completely structurally done and complete by architectural standards, but just the small pieces of painting and dust and getting debris out of the spaces, it wasn't. Seeking assistance, I really just very transparent that I am a 6-person team, and I have 3 buildings and I need help. So Emily, can you help me? Assistant director, can you please help me? Like, we really, I need help, and that's just what it was. Reconstructing hall opening, so literally the process of opening the hall. So I wanted to make it as inclusive as possible. So yes, just because the building just opened doesn't mean that I can't have balloons in my lobby to welcome you when you come into this space. And that everybody's not decked out in blue and gold, engaged and ready to say, hey, welcome to Spartan Village, welcome to UNCG, come on in. Welcome to your new home. So staffing patterns. Again, I said that I moved 2 staff members, had to move into the space, and then, what does this mean for duty rounds? Like, how are we going to do duty rounds? Let's do a walkthrough. So now you have 3 buildings to go through instead of your 2 and around a construction zone. How do we have that happen? Additional support. Again, I just was really transparent. And my assistant director was very extremely helpful. Emily was, what is it that you need? What can we talk about? Is it something that, hey, do you remember this process? Yes, let's try and find it. It was a very mutual relationship, and any kind of support that I needed, I truly received. And the communication to residents. So we, again, everything that we did in August, prepping for the other 600 students that were coming in, we did that again. So that was a newsletter going out to the Highland residents saying, hey, welcome to Spartan Village, welcome to Highland Hall, this is what you need to know. Be prepared for X, be prepared for Y, this is where you park, these are your RAs, just really fluid communication with the residents. So community building, so balancing staff dynamics and workload, that really was, I think, an interesting challenge for my staff because 3 buildings, 6 staff members, 5 staff members, how do we do all the things that you expect us to do and still build a community and still feel invested and still be a student, and still be a person. So we really had some really intentional conversations with my staff members. I supported them as people first and said, hey, I see that that's a lot. So what is it that I can do to assist you? Or do you need an extra week? Or, just really being proactive and positive and open about the realities of having this additional expansive workload. Safety and security. So I think that is paramount in working in housing and having someone's home. Like, this is your space, you need to be safe, you need to feel secure. And I know that you're living in a building that recently burned down, so how do I make you feel safe and secure in this space? And so we didn't mask it, we didn't hide it. If the student asked about it, we were transparent. But it was, hey, if you hear a fire alarm, particularly in this building, I need you to get out of the building. Because I don't know what that means. I don't know if we're going to have another 23 fire alarms like we did in the fall with our other buildings because of dust or whatever. So, please take that seriously. And then learning the new community. That's just building layouts. It is intricate. You can get into one way, can't get into another. You got to go out a certain door. And so the staff is like, wait, can we do this again? Can we walk again? So we literally walk from level 0 to level 4, back and forth, so they can really understand the space. And then incorporation of community programming and student development initiatives. So just being intentional about making sure that, yes, okay, so we've had this crisis, it is rebuilt, we're here, let's move forward. Let's make this your home, let's make you feel engaged, let's make you feel safe. And so let's get to know the staff. The students always saw me, but like my residents knew who I was. I showed up to the first floor meeting and said, hey, this is who I am, this is what happened here, but we're moving forward. It's going to be great. You're safe, you're secure. Let us know what you need.
So I do think that in the interest of time, since we started a few minutes late, we do want to get everyone back on track. We are going to skip a discussion of overall crisis response and some of the broader themes. And so really at this point, I think we're wrapping up, which will get us right on time to go back to our philanthropy project. But if you have any questions, Ashley and I are both here to chit chat and just kind of update you. We appreciate your attention. And hopefully we came off as, we did enjoy last year's